Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thank you all for being here. Welcome to the Trova 101 webinar. Thank you again for being here. Maybe you're here because you've seen fellow creators hosting trips and traveling the world, and maybe you want to know how they do it, or perhaps you've heard about TrovaTrip but don't quite know who we are or how it works, or maybe you saw a super cool ad online about getting paid to travel and want to know how to make that happen for yourself. So either way, however you found us, we are so glad you're here. And in the next hour, we're going to be diving into how, as a creator, you can use the TrovaTrip platform to travel the world with your community. If you have questions on the topics that we're covering at any given moment, feel free to use the Q&A feature in Zoom. The reason we ask that is because as questions come into the chat, it gets really hard to monitor, manage, and address those questions. So we will be pausing for questions throughout this webinar at different stages. So please feel free to ask questions relevant to the topics we're talking about at each of those stages in the Q&A section. And we will definitely also save time for general Q&A at the end, but we'll never get to the end if I keep talking on this slide. So let's dive in. First of all, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Austin. I have been with TrovaTrip for 3.5 years now and have dedicated my time here to helping creators find success using the TrovaTrip platform. I personally have always had a passion for empowering people to live their best lives and make the most out of the day. And so working with creators to build these safe spaces out in the world where they can encourage their audience to get out there and see the world has been so fulfilling for me. My favorite part about working here is got to be the impact that we have on the people who might not have otherwise taken that leap, to travel to another country. And I'm reading all of our traveler reviews where people talk about how a trip and the friends that they've made on it have changed their lives. And I just have to say that is one of the most rewarding parts of being a part of TrovaTrip. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you for your interest in joining us today and potentially offering these experiences to your community. I'm so glad that you're here. But we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about TrovaTrip. What is TrovaTrip, right? Who are we? So we are the first group travel platform that makes it easy for content creators, entrepreneurs, small businesses to bring their online communities offline through life-changing experiences. And we do that through our mission of helping people find their community everywhere in the world. So think about traveling the world and exploring places like Egypt or Bali with your most loyal followers and creating those unforgettable memories together and building those lifelong friendships. That magic that comes from exploring the globe and breaking out of your comfort zones together is something you just can't get anywhere else. And that's exactly what makes Trova different from other group travel platforms. We're not just this run-of-the-mill group travel company. We're actually the first of our kind to enable creators specifically to lead group travel experiences with their followers. And as a creator, you've already built this strong community of like-minded people. So when you get all of those people that have that one thing in common, whatever it is that, they follow you for, on a trip to go explore the world, it's not just meeting up with strangers. You're meeting up with who's about to be your friends, traveling with your kind of people. And to me, that sounds like a recipe for success. So let's dive into kind of the platform model, how this works, and what the jargon is that we're going to be using throughout this, this webinar. So before we get into hosting, what that entails, it's really important to understand, how TrovaTrip actually works. We like to say, Trova is a three-sided marketplace. We connect creators, tour operators, and travelers. So to kind of break that down and make it a little more easy to understand, we like to think about it as similar to your favorite food delivery app, right? So food delivery apps are also three-sided marketplaces. They're a third-party service that connects customers with restaurants they want to order from and a driver who delivers the food right to their doorstep. So Similarly, TrovaTrip offers the platform that connects customers, which we call travelers, with creators, which we call hosts, and a local tour operator who delivers the experience of making group travel easier than ever. And since 2017, we have been making this magic happen all over the world. We've had 1,500 trips booked so far, 550 active hosts that are planning trips right now, offering experiences to 21,000 travelers who have booked trips on our platform. And they're going on trips that have been designed by the best tour operators in the business. We have about 150, maybe a little bit more, of these itineraries for you to choose from. So through all of these trips, all of these experiences, we have earned an average review of 4.6 out of 5 stars. Customer experience is something that we take very seriously, that we really pride ourselves on. So getting that average review from our travelers means so much to us. So why should you be thinking about hosting group trips? Well, when thinking about growing your brand, community is really everything. You know, these are the people that make up your audience. They love you, they want to see you succeed, and they want to meet you in real life. So with the TrovaTrip platform, you get to travel the world together and share those once-in-a-lifetime experiences, breaking out of your comfort zones and connecting in a way that you just can't do online. And we've heard so many amazing stories that come out of these trips, you know, everything from people getting married on a trip to becoming roommates after, to even meeting the person who would one day become their surrogate. The kind of magic that comes from traveling with like-minded folks really is indescribable. In my own experience, I went on our very first LGBTQ trip to Costa Rica with hosts Ash and Mac. It was me and a group of queer women. So being that, you know, I was the only man on the trip, I was like, am I going to be the odd man out? I don't know. But that night, the first night we got there, we had a welcome dinner where we decided to go around the table, do a little icebreaker, and everyone shared their coming out stories. And any feeling of, am I going to fit in with this group after that discussion completely diminished. You know, it was so comforting to know that no matter where we came from or how different we might be, we have this common thread that kind of ties us all together through our lived experiences, our struggles, and it kind of shaped the rest of the trip, the bond that we created just that first night. So that's just one example of how that magic really comes to life that first day you get there. So other than community, obviously, there are some incredible benefits that come from hosting with Trova as well. One, I'm sure, is on top of everyone's mind, getting paid to travel. We allow our hosts to stay in control of their earnings by setting their own margin for each trip. We'll get into that a little bit later, exactly how earnings work and what you can expect to make with Trova. But you can also use TrovaTrip to continue growing your brand. You know, whether you want to lead workshops on a trip, if you have a teachable skill set and you want to share that with your travelers, or you just want to, you know, generate unique content. And I mean, who doesn't love travel content, right? So with this content, you can inspire people to book your future trips and attract new brand sponsorships. We actually had a host in the body positivity space. Her name's Bailey. She did a trip to Tulum. And on that trip, she'd reached out to a size-inclusive swimsuit brand and said, hey, I'm doing this trip with my followers. We're going to be creating content throughout the entire thing. So if you send us swimsuits for me and all the girls, we'll actually create content on this trip. And I'll use it to promote your brand once we're back. And this brand was very excited by this. So not only did all the girls on this trip get some free athletic gear, but then they also got Bailey a new brand sponsorship. So using this experience to then grow your brand in different ways, you can get really creative with it. And we have a team here that is dedicated to helping hosts find that success, whatever that looks like for them. And lastly, with this, you know, if you've ever tried planning group travel on your own, I'm sorry. It's calling it a headache is, the least you could say about it. But you spend so much time and stress booking accommodations and transportation, finding local companies that you trust enough to work with. Managing payments from your travelers, like all of that, doing it on your own is nearly impossible unless you have a team helping you or you have more hours in the day than I do. And if that's the case, please tell me your secret because got a lot going on. We take all of the stress away, but because we handle coordinating all the trips, we have a local guide on the ground, making sure everything's running smoothly and safely. So from the pre-planning to preparing for the trip itself to going on the trip, we have your back every step of the way, and we do the heavy lifting for you. So let's talk about what that journey looks like, how hosting with TrovaTrip really works. So we start by taking all the data that we've collected over the years from folks that are in market to travel, preferences that they have about what they want out of a trip. And we work with tour operators to design itineraries based around that data so that we can provide experiences that you and your audience can get excited about. And then each host will share out their own travel survey with their audience. So that way we can learn more about what itineraries or experiences your audience in particular will be the most excited about. And once we have that data, we will then cross-reference it with all the itineraries. Like I said, we have about 150 plus. We'll cross-reference your data with that so we can pick the perfect trip for you and your audience. Everything from, where they want to go, the price of the trip, best time of year to travel. And then you use our online portal to request that trip. The operators that are working in that destination will then let you know how much it costs. So that way you can add your margin to it. And then you open the trip for bookings. You'll then go ahead and promote this trip to your audience, drive bookings. Again, we have a team here that's dedicated to helping you every step of that way. So promo tactics, data analytics on how your promotions are going, best places to focus on. And then we do that heavy lifting of managing your bookings, customer service, payment processing, sending reminder emails to your travelers. Then when it's time, a local guide will meet you in the destination and handle all of those on the ground logistics so that you and your travelers can enjoy a stress-free experience together. We're going to go ahead and pause. If anyone has questions, please add them to the Q&A. I know this was just a high-level overview. We will be diving into these details a bit more granularly throughout, but I'd love to hear if you have any questions so far.
Hey everybody, I'm Ashley from TrovaTrip, going to be here supporting the Q&A today. So we have one question coming in, which is, can we suggest to work with tour guides from our own network?
That is a great question. So we have to vet tour operators before we begin working with them. We look at a lot of different aspects of their business, everything from the insurances they carry to their crisis management systems, what they do in those situations, their communication. So what I would suggest is if you have a partner that is a tour operator that you think would be really great on our platform, have them actually apply on the TrovaTrip website to be an operator, and we can begin working with them and seeing if it's a good fit. That way, once we begin working with them, we can start building itineraries with them, and that would be how you can work with a preferred tour operator. But we do have to do our due diligence in making sure the experiences are safe, fun, and cross all the T's and dot all the I's. So any other questions?
Yeah, it looks like we have an additional question. Is there a white label opportunity, or is the Trova brand on all emails, etc.?
At this time, there is not a white label opportunity through our platform. However, you are welcome to send your own trip reminder emails. You can actually, in the portal, shut off the marketing emails and take all of the emails that we have collected for your email list, which we'll get into what that looks like and how that works in a little bit. You can export all that data and keep it for yourself and move it off the TrovaTrip platform. However, the landing page for booking the trip would be on the TrovaTrip website. So if you're thinking more of like branding and the emails that are sent, we can definitely find a solution there. But when it comes to the actual trip page and driving traffic to book the trip, that would come to the TrovaTrip website.
We have a question from Micah. How flexible are the itineraries? If we want to delete certain aspects or make space for our own workshops, can we do that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And it's sometimes a little bit tricky. So the way that we build our itineraries is we build them out so that the pacing of the trip will be in the traveler's experience best interest, right? So a lot of times what we'll do is if there's certain activities that are further away from the hotel, we might set up one of those activities and then on the bus ride back have another one, right? So for those that are kind of intertwined for timing reasons, removing one or moving it to a different day makes the itinerary a little harder to kind of rearrange. However, if you ever want to just erase an activity, this doesn't really feel on brand for me, I'm going to go ahead and just remove this activity. We can do that for any activity that you'd like. Most trips have free time kind of built in just because we don't want to overwhelm people that are, go, go, go all the time. So there's a lot of free time typically built into it. But if you ever wanted to remove an activity to make more free time, you're welcome to do that. And then we can also work with you either in the free time that's already in the itinerary or by removing an activity. We can set up those workshops for you, letting us know, what your vision is for it, what kind of equipment you might need in terms of, let's say it's a yoga class, if you need yoga mats, dedicated space, etc. We work that out prior to the trip request going out to the operator so they can price it accordingly.
Okay, awesome. At this time, we're going to go ahead and keep moving forward. I see some more great questions, but they are going to be a little bit more general. So we'll go ahead and get to all of those at the end. We want to make sure you guys can walk through the whole hosting process and have all that information, and then we can circle back if needed.
Cool. Thanks, Ashley. All right. So let's dive into what our platform offers in terms of features and benefits. So first up, our itinerary marketplace. Again, 150 pre-designed itineraries that are right at your fingertips. So thinking back to what I was saying about planning your own trip, how much time it would take to build that, plan it, think about all of it. Now it's just a couple clicks away. We also offer audience research tools in the form of that survey, bringing that data into the platform, and then being able to quickly cross-reference that with those itineraries that we have, making the process of identifying where you're going to go, what you're going to do, so much easier, especially for a first-time host. Making those decisions can be a bit daunting if you've never done this before. So giving you that information so that you can make an informed decision about how to plan that perfect trip is really, really helpful and saves a lot of time. When it comes to trip planning, we make it easier to set a reasonable price for your trip, predict your earnings. Like I said, we can add those workshops in, no problem. So being able to just do that on a platform without having to get your Excel spreadsheet out and all of that. Then once you get bookings, right? So people are paying their down payment and on your trip now, our booking management system allows you to see and manage who is signed up for the trip and allows you to approve travelers before their spots are finalized. So that way you always know who is signed up and you're in control of who gets approved as well. We have an email marketing tool in the platform that makes it super easy to run an automated email marketing campaign targeting the people who've expressed interest in joining your trip, whether they fill out your survey or they engage with a link leading up to the trip actually launching. If they leave their email, we collect that for you and then run an email marketing campaign that you can actually go in and adjust the wording on the emails. You can add your own voice to it, so that it's more on brand for you in that way. And then the part that I think gets overlooked the most is payment processing. Doing that on your own. I was working with a host and I remember her telling me about how she ran a group trip once and had to do everything via Venmo or PayPal, and trying to like track down the people who haven't paid in full, but the deposits are due. So she's like paying money out of pocket. There's no cancellation policies or anything. So people aren't really locked in to like commit to paying her the rest of it. So that just got really daunting for her. And thinking about that, it's such an easy, not it's easy, but it's such a simple idea. Oh, they do payment processing, but the work that actually saves you is something to be excited about. So how do you get access to all of these benefits? Well, I'm happy to tell you. It's in the host portal. So this is your hub to plan, manage, and sell your group trips. Literally running a group trip side hustle all right here. You're able to browse available itineraries, again, cross-reference them with your survey data, ensuring you're picking the right trip. You can edit your trip page to be more on brand for you. Once your trip has launched, the portal will allow you to easily manage those marketing efforts, traveler details, and host earnings in real time. So let's talk about the hosting process. We do our best to make it as easy as possible for you. It's important to remember, we created this business model for creators. So we want to make this as easy as possible for creators specifically to plan, manage, and sell their trips. So starting with creating your account, you'll get access to a survey link. You then survey your audience. You use that data to plan your trip. You then promote your trip, get bookings, and then when it's time, you travel and make that money. So let's dive into each of these steps in a little bit more detail. The way that we're able to avoid requiring a deposit to plan your trips is through our built-in survey tool. This gives us an understanding of your audience demand, their budget, what your audience finds most exciting in travel, and it will help set you up for success. So why should you want to survey your audience before planning? Well, it gives you incredible insights for planning the trip itself, like we've mentioned, but what's almost more beneficial is bringing your audience into the planning process, making folks feel more excited about or connected to this trip before it ever even goes live. It's not just something that's like, hey, I put this together, I hope you like it, but instead it's like, hey, I want to build a community-focused experience for all of us, but I want to hear from you first. This also allows you to then grow your email list. Everyone who fills out your survey will then be added to your TrovaTrip email list, which organically builds awareness for your upcoming trips and allows you to easily target people who are clearly interested in traveling with you. Plus, the audience data and the emails that you collect here, those are yours to keep. So you can export that data at any time, whether or not you choose to actually host a trip. So if you want to use that to build your own email list or continue growing your brand in any way, that information is yours. So when we do survey an audience, we look for a certain demographic, and that is people over the age of 18 with budgets that exceed $2,000. And the reason for that is they are the most likely to actually book your trip. So if we have a bunch of data from people who say, my budget is $100 to travel, we don't necessarily want that data skewing the rest of your data when it comes to the people who are actually going to book. So we want to make sure we're really tailoring what we look for to those folks. In order to actually unlock your ability to request a trip in the portal, you have to acquire at least 50 qualified responses. However, folks that are only able to get 50 to 99 qualified responses are far less likely to be successful on the TrovaTrip platform. The demand necessary from your audience in order to sell this type of an experience, we've seen that people who get 100 or more are actually 83% more likely to confirm, which means sell the minimum number of spots, their first trip, rather than, you know, those people that got 50 to 99. So I know a lot of times hosts will, you know, see this 50 qualified response threshold. And once they hit it, they're like, cool, I'm in, I got this. But you can actually unlock more itineraries by getting more responses. And in turn, you're building more awareness for your trip. You're getting more people on your email list who will then be targeted and able to drive bookings from it. And you get a more robust set of data to actually plan your trip with. So my advice to hosts is always to get your survey in front of as many people in your community as possible. And this looks like a strategic plan of promoting your survey across multiple channels, typically over the course of about a week, and really just meeting your audience where they're at. So questions that I like to ask hosts who are kind of gearing up for this process are, you know, where do you find your audience is the most engaged? Where are they the most responsive? Is there specific days that you find your engagement spikes? Let's get that survey out on those days. And then this is also just a little shout out. The gal you see here who's saying, let's travel together. This is actually one of our super hosts. Her name is Lindsey. Her handle is One Girl Wandering. She has hosted, I don't even know what, 15 trips, something.
It's 12 to 15, something in that range.
She's got a lot under her belt, and she's actually doing, she's going live.
Yeah, we're doing an Instagram live with her today after this event at 2:30 PST on Instagram. So if you want to go check out the Trova Instagram, Lindsey's going to be there. You can hear from a host who's run tons of trips in the past, drop in questions there. It'll be a really cool opportunity if you do want to speak to somebody who has that experience. Yes.
And we'll talk more about Lindsey and what she's up to in a moment, but just wanted to call her out because you're going to see her in a couple more slides as well. So you have shared your survey far and wide. You have gathered hundreds of responses from people that are so excited to travel with you. And you're able to look at that data in your host portal. So you've created an account with TrovaTrip, logging into that account. This is our easy to use survey analyzer. So you'll then be able to see at a glance where people want to go, what they want to do, what their budget is, best time of year to travel, all of this data that can help you pinpoint exactly where you want to go. Everything you need for planning a perfect trip, you can find it right here. Do we have any questions about survey responses, survey data?
We do have a question about how large of a community do your creators typically have?
Great question. What we're finding right now, as we are looking more into data on typical audience sizes for a successful host, typically on the lower end, we're looking at about 15,000 followers on Instagram. I believe we're looking at about 50,000 on TikTok. But I would say if you have 15,000 follower count on Instagram, you'd be a great fit. However, we have had people host trips, successfully sell them with less than that as well. I always like to say it's less about the follower count and more about how engaged you are with your community, how excited they are about the things you're doing, the content you're building, and how well you brought your own brand and your own voice and touch into this trip by hosting your own workshops, adding value in those ways, really making it relevant to your audience and your brand. That helps a lot as well.
Next question is, if two creators are partnering together to bring both communities together for a travel experience, would we need a grand total of 50 responses to qualify, or 50 responses per creator?
Great question. We would want to see 50 per creator, but it's also worth noting we want to see 300 qualified responses per person, because we do have tiered itineraries. So 50 doesn't unlock all of our itineraries, because we want to make sure that the itineraries people are able to request, we have the data to prove that folks with a lower demand from an audience can actually sell these specific experiences. So our mission is to make sure that hosts are set up for success at every turn. And so that's why I'm stressing so much. 50 is just like the bare minimum, but you'll have a much higher likelihood of finding success should we get more responses. But to be more specific with your question, hosts that are hosting a trip, we do look for 50 individually, at least.
Next question is, when you say unlocking itineraries, does that mean that the itineraries are not customizable?
What I mean by unlocking itineraries is that we don't allow people to just sign up for an account and start requesting trips. We have to see, the demand from their audience in order to give them the ability to start requesting trips. So what I mean by unlocking an itinerary means you get enough responses to open those itineraries up for you to be able to request them from an operator and host those trips.
Great. Last question for this section. How many people minimum do you need for a trip, and how many people can you accommodate maximum?
Great question. On average, our trips minimum are about 8 or 10, depending on the itinerary. And at the maximum, we're typically seeing 20 to 24. We do have some itineraries that can accommodate 40 to 50 people on a trip, but it's not very common that we see hosts wanting to host trips that large. So typically you're looking at 8 to 10 to 20 to 24.
And we actually have one more question, or just thing I think should be good to clarify. Can you explain one more time why we don't offer fully customizable itineraries?
Absolutely. So TrovaTrip is a free platform for hosts to use, right? So we don't require you to make a down payment, put down a deposit. The way that we're able to do that is by working with tour operators to build out itineraries that can then be used by multiple creators, multiple hosts. So that is why we don't have customizable itineraries or the ability to build your own trip, because it takes a lot of time from our professional trip designers to build out these itineraries, to make these partnerships work, to source the hotels, the activities, all of that, that if we were to be doing that with every single host for every single trip, it just wouldn't be sustainable, and you wouldn't be able to just go in and click on a trip and go. It would be a much longer, tedious process. So that is not something that we offer. All right, so we have surveyed our audience. We have gotten tons of responses. Your audience is so excited to start traveling with you, and they are waiting to hear, where is it that we're going? So we look over that survey data, and then you can check out our itineraries that we had worked with operators to design and build. We have them in 50 countries around the world. So wherever your audience is most excited about, we're going to look in those places. And you'll want to pick a trip that really aligns with that survey data to set you up for success. And the reason why I always say to hosts, like, your first trip, go with the survey data, because what you're going to do is you're going to prove out to your audience that this is something that works. If you go and stray from that survey data, your likelihood of confirming and going on the trip goes down. And if you have your first trip, you launch it, a couple people sign up, but then it ends up getting canceled, you're going to lose that reputation with your audience that and lose their trust that this is something you're going to be able to do in the future. So if you ever then pivot, go back, launch another trip, you've kind of already lost that trust. And we want to make sure that that doesn't happen. We want to set our hosts up for success. So that's why I always say that first trip, let's stick to that survey data the best we can. Once we've proven it out to your audience, they're excited, then we can go with maybe one that's a little more expensive, or maybe one that isn't the top destination people were looking to go, but one that you were really excited about. So once you do pick that trip, you then go into the portal and you request it from the itineraries tab. And you do that by submitting what we call a trip request. Then our operator will look at all of the information you've given, such as, dates, if you'd like to bring a +1 along with you, workshop details, if you want to remove any activities, we put all of that into this trip request. Then our operator gets to work on pricing it. So they will price out the trip, and you'll then be notified when it's time to set your margin for the trip. So that's what we're looking at here, is our easy to use pricing tool. And let me go ahead and break down what you're looking at here. So in the middle section, you'll see cost per traveler. And you'll notice that the cost per traveler changes as the number of travelers on the trip goes up. So the cost per traveler is the base operational cost of the trip, including Trova's margin, which is about 15 to 20%, and all of the operational costs, hotels, transportation, everything that goes into it. So the reason why the price is changing as more travelers come onto the trip is because fixed costs are spread amongst everyone on the trip, making the cost per person lower as more people join. So because of this, and the fact that you will set a trip price that is a set cost, your earnings will be the difference between the operating cost and the price you sell the trip at. Since that cost per traveler is going down as more people join, you will be seeing your earnings go up exponentially, because as the operational cost goes down, your margin just gets bigger. That's why at 10 travelers, you're seeing, $36.80, but then at 20, it's $14,000 because you're making more per person and you have more people on board. So that's why this pricing tool is really helpful, because that in and of itself can be a little bit confusing. And if you're trying to look over a spreadsheet and figure this out, it's going to get a little wonky. So what we've done is broken it all down here for you. You up top get to choose your early bird and regular pricing. And then you get to see what your earnings will be at different traveler numbers. So that way you can kind of predict what you're going to be making. You can make sure that you're selling your trip in your audience budget and still making the money that you're hoping to. So we have a dedicated team here that can help with this step as well, making sure that we are pricing it at the right place, and then getting the number of spots booked to help you hit those earnings goals. And lastly, the way that Trova covers your flights is through an advancement of your earnings. This advancement is paid out when your trip confirms. So that way you can go and book your flights without having to pay out of pocket for it. And then the last thing that I'll mention here is that on average, hosts are making about $6,000 per confirmed trip. And for our sold out trips, the average earnings for a host on a sold out trip is $16,000. So any questions regarding earnings, how that works? I know that's a lot of information, but I'm happy to kind of break it down and answer any questions you have.
I think the question is, what is the projected earnings per traveler? So if you could walk through that one more time.
Yeah, so you set your margin, which basically, again, it's the difference between the operational cost and where you price your trip. So you choose what your earnings are per person by setting that margin. And the projected earnings that you're seeing on the screen right now are total. So that's if you have 8 people booked and you sell it at this price, you will make $1,500, right? So I hope that answers your question.
All right, next question is, how long are the itineraries typically?
Great question. It depends. So typically, if it's a domestic trip or one that's closer, typically like Central America, Canada, US, the Caribbean, a lot of those trips are closer to like 5 to 7 days. However, with trips that are longer to get there, right? I'm going to Thailand in January and it's going to be like a 30-hour excursion to get there. After spending that much time traveling, typically you want to spend a little bit more than 5 to 7 days in a destination. So our international overseas trips are typically closer to like 8 to 10 days on average. But again, it totally depends on the itinerary, the destination. And we've had hosts in the past that have said, oh, I'd actually like to like cut a day. So this Greece trip looks really fun. But I don't want it to be 9 days. Let's do 7 days instead. And similar to cutting out activities, we can absolutely do that.
Great. Next question is, would my attendees be able to pay off a trip's total amount over time before the scheduled trip date?
Yes. We partner with a firm. So at checkout, they can apply for pay over time with a firm. If they would like, they can get up to 6, 12, or 18-month payment plans. So let's say you're going on a trip that is running in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, but you set up that 12-month payment plan. You can make lower monthly payments each month, even after the trip happens. Or if you're somebody that wants to get it paid off prior, you can put a 25% down payment and then pay off the rest of the trip at least 90 days prior to the trip actually happening.
Can a trip include more than one destination?
Well, some of our itineraries do have like multiple cities. We have some trips that have domestic flights within countries. So I would definitely suggest like going to our itineraries page on the website and looking through what those look like. But if your question is more of like, can I take this itinerary and this one and merge them together to kind of create one big mega itinerary, we don't offer that at this time. Cool. All right. So we've priced our trip. We know what we're going to be making. We have a promo plan ready so that we can hit our earnings goal. All that's left to do now is get this trip live and in front of my audience. So before you open the trip up for bookings, you're going to want to call or you're going to want to announce the destination to your audience and raise awareness about the upcoming trip. We call it launch. So launching a trip means opening it for bookings. So what we suggest for all of our hosts using our platform is once you have pricing back, start letting your audience know, hey, remember that survey you took? Well, the results are in and we are going to Colombia. And then throughout about a week leading up to that trip launch, you want to pepper in teasers and promos and get your audience engaged and excited about the fact that this trip will be open for bookings soon. Let me explain kind of why that methodology works so well. You want to get as many bookings out the gate when your trip goes live as possible, because if you get under the minimum number of bookings needed to confirm the trip, your trip stays in a pending status. If somebody puts a down payment on a trip and 3 weeks, a month, 2 months later, the trip is still pending, you're going to run the risk of people dropping off and then having to backfill and put in more work. So by getting the excitement built, building your email list during this time leading up to your trip launching, you're going to increase your chances of confirming that trip as soon as you release it to your audience. And that's why we suggest this method here. You're going to want to include information about, the destination, the activities you're doing, the price of the trip, and share what we call an email collection link. This is a link that allows people to get notified as soon as the trip goes live via email. This link will help you boost the email list that you've started building with your survey. So that way, when the automated emails that are built into our portal kick in, you have those going to these people who are already excited. And we got marketing here. I believe the stat is 23% of bookings come from emails. Yeah. So a good chunk of your bookings will be coming from these emails, making your workload a little bit lighter when it comes to promoting the trip going forward. And also, Lindsey, this is her again. So she announced the trip destination, obviously, with this one to Colombia. She was releasing details like dates, activities, pricing, and she did a really good job. And now she's hosting like 12 to 15 trips. Again, just going to let everyone know, we are hosting an Instagram Live today with Lindsey. So make sure to tune in and hear from a host that's run trips in the past. So once your trip is ready to go live, this is what your trip page would look like. This is where people will go to learn more details about the ins and outs of the itinerary. They'll see what's included on the trip, what's not included, and they're going to be able to request a spot right here. When your trip does confirm, you want to make sure to continue promoting that trip so that you don't run the risk of folks dropping off, getting below the minimum. We want this to be a healthy group size, and we want you to be maximizing your earnings. So continuing to promote the trip, creating that strategic plan of like, all right, I'm going to talk about this trip every Tuesday at this time. I'm going to try a different thing, whatever that might look like. We have seen the most success with hosts who are very consistent in promoting their trip, talking about it, and doing so in a way that is community focused. It's less about come travel with me, and it's more about let's go together. Any questions about promoting your trip, getting it ready to launch?
We just had one come in, question of how does Trova help during the promotion time?
Yeah, great question. So we have a team of account executives and account managers. They're your TrovaTrip rep who is here to coach and guide you along the way. So we also have dashboards with analytics that have, correlations between your promos, because we can see when there's spikes to your trip page, and we can assume that you were promoting at that time when it drove traffic. We can see where that traffic came from. So Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, where did that link live that drove people to it? And then we can see when your bookings came in. So we can literally run this analytics on your promos and help guide you like, okay, cool. So this promo you did on this day on this platform is clearly driving more bookings than these other ones. So let's switch gears, promote more here, use this type of messaging because it's working really well. So we can get really in the details with you and help you best understand what's working, what's not, and set you up to sell out your trip and make that money.
Great. Next question is, if we've never been to a destination before, what's a good way to promote it? Would Google Pictures work?
So I actually suggest using a service or a site called Unsplash. It's license-free photos, so you don't have to worry about any copyright or anything like that. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know how that works, but I just know that you can use those photos without any repercussions potentially. So you can check out any destination on Unsplash. They have a huge library of license-free photos that you can use. And so that's typically what I recommend with my hosts. And yeah, I think that's probably the best bet for finding photos of the destination.
Unsplash is great. Another one is Pexels, P-E-X-E-L-S. They also offer royalty-free photos as well as like stock video footage, which can be really engaging for, drumming up excitement about a destination.
Nice. We'll be sure to include those resources in our post-webinar email.
Next question is, how far out in advance can I plan a trip? 6 months, a year?
Great question. And you oddly hit the nail on the head with that one. So we do plan trips about 6 to 12 months in advance, but it also depends on the destination. So if you're going somewhere domestic, somewhere closer, kind of like what I was saying earlier, Canada, North America, Central America, the Caribbean, typically those do best with a 5 to 8 month lead time. Whereas trips that are overseas cost a little bit more money. The flights are going to be more expensive. There's going to be more time off that's needed. Those trips typically perform well 8 to 12 months in advance. So again, your TrovaTrip rep can help you kind of guide what kind of lead time we're looking at or what would work best. We also want to look at your survey data, see when your audience wants to travel, to kind of map that out. But on just as like a standard, it's going to be about 5 to 8 months in advance for domestic, 8 to 12 months in advance for international.
Thank you. Will the trips be insured just in case they get canceled due to unforeseen circumstances or an act of God?
Yes. So we actually have a section in our terms called force majeure, which is just that. It's when looking at our terms, because we are a 3-sided marketplace, we have contracts that support hosts, travelers, and our operators. So if something goes awry, or there's a natural disaster or something out of our control, stops us from being able to operate a trip, our force majeure clause allows us to cancel a trip without any penalties or fees having to be collected from any of those 3 parties.
All right, next question is, who are some of the local tour operators you work with, and can you pick a specific guide?
I can speak to my favorite guide, who was our guide when I went to Costa Rica. His name's Ivan, and if he's listening, hi, Ivan. What I can speak to also is, the relationship that we had with him. He started the trip, sitting at his own table at our welcome dinner. He and the bus driver just chose to. By the end of it, we did not let that happen. We were like, no, you are a part of the group. Come in, hang out with us. They become part of your family on these trips. So the guides are not only so helpful, making sure everything runs smoothly, but also they really are just like a part of the trip, because they love people. They love introducing people to their culture. And so the demeanor that they bring to a trip is so warm and welcoming and friendly.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on from the promotion section to actually being on trip, and then we can work through the rest of the questions at that time.
Yeah, I love that we kind of got ahead of ourselves with that, because on trip, once you're there, the best part is joining your community in this exciting destination where adventure and connection await. So reason why that's the most exciting part is because you don't have to show up with a clipboard, running around, trying to solve problems, run all the logistics. That's what the local guide is for. They are professional. They do this for a living, and it's their responsibility to make sure everything runs smoothly and safely. So that way, all that's left for you to do is just enjoy your time with your community and lead workshops if you've chosen to do any. But outside of that, there's no expectations that hosts will, coordinate anything or anything like that.
We do have a question about on trip. As a host, do we arrive the same day as our attendees, or can we arrive a little bit earlier to get settled and ready to welcome people?
Great question. So in the trip request that you're able to send to operators to get pricing, you can choose whether or not you want what we call a pre-trip transfer and a pre-trip accommodation. It does affect the pricing of the trip, because the cost of your night in the hotel prior to your travelers arriving is worked into the cost per traveler. but we do give that option to get your own private transfer and a night at the hotel the day prior to your audience arriving. A lot of times hosts will default to that just so they can shake the jet lag and kind of be ready when their travelers arrive the following day. And we offer that same feature to travelers as well, pre and post night accommodations. So if anyone wants to join or come earlier than the rest of the group gets there, they are also welcome to book that.
What happens if we have an issue with one of the guides?
Well, that hasn't happened yet, but you will have access to an emergency number for the operator. So essentially the company that employs the guide. And you'll be able to reach out to them, let them know if anything is going wrong, and they will act quickly to remedy that. Given, TrovaTrip is in a different time zone, sometimes we're, not able, given our working hours, to address anything. So if it's something in destination that's an emergency, especially if it has to do with the guide, we have emergency contact information to get in touch with the local operator.
Great. Does TrovaTrip provide the option to include photographer, videographer, and or drone operator on a trip?
This question has been coming up. So I've been doing this for 3 years now, and this question has been coming up increasingly more and more lately. No, at the time, we do not have that as an option. However, what you could do is when you're sending your trip request a +1, so you can get an additional person to join you on your trip. We call this a companion. That you can even book their own room. So if you have someone in mind that you want to bring along to help with creating content, you can then get them to join the trip for free. Similar to yours, the cost of their trip will just be worked into the cost per traveler. And a lot of our hosts actually prefer this because they have people that they love working with that know their good angles, and they get to go and have a good time with them.
Cool. And also just a little sneak peek into the future. No promises, but one thing that's really cool about TrovaTrip is we do love our hosts. We listen to you guys because this has been coming up a lot. It's something we're talking about doing in the future. So if you guys have those things that are really important to you, please continue to share them with our team so we can try and prioritize them accordingly. Next question is, can I have themed travel? And in the chat, this submitter goes along to say like a baddies trip or a Barbie trip.
Yes. Okay. Yes, I love that. I love anytime a host can bring their brand into this experience, because that's what people will look at and they will say, that's what makes it not just a generic trip that we're all going on, but it is your trip and you can bring that energy, bring that branding. I love a baddie trip. I love a Barbie trip. I'm going to go on it. I hope you do.
Cool. What is the most common location that creators choose and why?
Yeah. The most common trips are Bali and Costa Rica. They survey really well. I think they're bucket list destinations for a lot of people. They also have kind of this mix of culture, beach, like outdoor activity, jungly vibes, different animals, very biodiverse. So it kind of has a little something for everyone in both Bali and Costa Rica. And they're both relatively affordable. So folks that, have a lower budget with their audience data, those are very appealing places because it meets all the expectations, checks all the boxes, and they're both places people get excited about.
All right, last question for this section. Will there be a list of the nearest emergency facilities provided? Hospitals, clinics, etc.
We do provide a pre-trip trip prep doc that has information about the destination, where you're going, things like that. I want to say we do include this information, but I'm actually not 100% sure on it.
Yeah, so I can speak to that. So in the trip prep doc, you are going to have kind of everything laid out, all the cities that you're going to be in. That being said, your local guide is going to be kind of your key here. And again, you'll be introduced with them in chat. A lot of the trips that I've gone on, right off the bat, the guide goes, hey, here are all my favorite restaurants. And if you have specific questions around, hey, what is going to be the nearest hospital when we're at this destination, you can message them in advance to find that out, or when you're there in person, they're going to know ATMs to get you to, hospitals, like they've got all the answers. This is where they've grown up, they've lived their whole life, so you're going to be in really good hands with them. Cool. You can go ahead and move along.
Cool. So now that you've learned all that it takes from creating your account all the way to going on the trip itself, what are you waiting for? All it takes to start this journey is creating that account, grabbing that survey link, and begin collecting responses. A member of our team will then reach out and offer our support so that we can help you find success traveling the world with your audience. If you'd like, you can sign up at trovatrip.com/host, or if you have questions, shoot us an email at host@trovatrip.com. Cool. I know we just got back from question land, but we're going right back. Any general questions that you have about Trova, getting started, anything that's on your mind about it, I'm happy to help and answer.
I do see one question coming through, and I'm going to field this just because we're on the marketing side of things over here. Does TrovaTrip create projects with their creators, like a vlog production? So historically, we have not done a lot of this, but recently we started partnering with our creators for some on-trip content creation opportunities. This is not done on every trip. It kind of is something that we're just starting to dip our toes into, but hopefully as we grow, there will be more of these opportunities. All right. Any other questions general about TrovaTrip or anything you want to get a little more detail on?
Cool. All right. Well, we are over time, so I am happy to cut things off here. Don't forget, if you want to hear from one of our hosts, Lindsey at One Girl Wondering and TrovaTrip are hosting an Instagram Live today, 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and have a great day.